Today, we welcome in a very special guest to discuss the offseason and the team's outlook for 2025. It's Green Bay Packers General Manager, Brian Gutekunst. What's up, Brian?
Not much. How you guys doing?
Yeah.
Doing well. I'm just happy you can hear Corey. Well,
Yeah.
we're
I know,
already
right?
ahead of
We did
last
it.
year's
We did it.
schedule.
We did it.
We did.
We're
We can really
contending
shut
for
down the interview now.
championships. We're contending for
Improvements,
championships.
right?
Let's go.
Absolutely. Year-to-year improvement. Brian, really appreciate you being here, man. First up, right off the bat, talking about an offseason where, man, it feels like there's a ton of headlines no matter what's going on. I thought coming off of like the last couple of years, a lot of quarterback drama, right? There would be maybe a little less drama around the team, but it seems there's always something going on with the green and gold. But trying to pull back 30,000 feet, what is your first impression of the group now that you've gone through an offseason? You've got them all together. Obviously, you had your rookie camp, and now you've had your OTAs and your mini camp. You've put them on the field. What are your kind of first 30,000-foot impressions of the group you've assembled?
Yeah, I think I really like the way these guys work together. It's an interesting group because we do have a lot of guys who are young by age, but very experienced by the amount of football they've played in the National Football League. Big games, playoff games, those kind of things. So I think, watching some of these guys come into different roles as far as leadership goes and bringing everybody else with them. It's been a good offseason to watch that happen, and certainly something that's really critical for our success moving forward. So, but no, they work really well together. I think they gel with the coaching staff. It's been a good offseason for us, and now it's just time to get ready for the real grind, which is training camp.
Can't wait for training camp, Brian. At the end of the season, there's this quote that's been going around. You said, it's time we started competing for championships, which I loved, by the way, so thank you for that. So I was thinking of, as I was thinking about questions, because Nagler only lets me get like one or two, so on my
We turned
one
you off last
question.
time, so
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So, what about this year and kind of like the process that you've gone through with the team? What about it makes you think that this team is ready to compete for a championship?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what they've been through over the past couple of years, and the experience that they've gotten. I just think that's the next step for us, right? I think we've played some really good football. We've been really competitive at times, but I think it's time for the consistency day in and day out to be there, and then that allows you to compete for championships. So I think this group has grown together the way we kind of wanted it to, and I think there's obviously some steps left, but I think they're ready for that challenge.
Specifically this offseason, do you think you accomplished what you needed to help this team get over the hump?
Yeah, I don't necessarily look at it as like trying to get over a hump or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of making sure that, there's competition in every room. That there's going to be multiple ways that we can win a football game, whether it's offensively, defensively, special teams. Like I said, I really do like the group. I like the competition. It's something we monitor 365 days a year and are always trying to add to that. But I like the way the competition is shaping up right now, and the way they're gelling with our coaching staff, with the vision that we have. So again, it's really, really early in training camp. I think you find out a lot about your football team as you move forward in the early part of that season. But I like where the guys are right now.
You mentioned competition, and I think there's something, you look at the roster, and it's been somewhat of a running joke this offseason online, which I know you're perennially online. You're a big Twitter guy, but something that, has continuously come up is people noticing how many wide receivers there are on this roster. There are a number of them. And I would suspect, and I'd like to get maybe confirmation from you, is the idea there as far as, yes, you've got guys who have done it for you, right? And a number of guys who've done it at a high level, put up a bunch of production for you, but just the sheer number seems to suggest, look, we can't be feeling ourselves, right? Like there's a lot of talent in that room, but I don't think you go around the league and say that's a group that's proved it and arrived. There's still a lot of kind of competition at the wide receiver spot in Green Bay.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of competition. I do think there's obviously some of those guys have proven some things in the National Football League and have done things, and some guys are just getting started. At the same time, nothing's for certain in this league. I mean, you guys know how injuries happen and what your needs are right now. where your depth is right now can completely change in a very quick, short order. So, but I've always felt from the time I've been involved in football that competition brings out the best in everybody. For the guys that we're trying to find to put this team together that can win in January, I think it's important that we have that kind of competition because, to reach the levels we want to get to, you got to be able to handle that fire, so to speak. So I think it's going to be interesting how it all shakes out. But I really like the character of the men in that room, and I think that certainly they're going to have a lot of opportunity as we move forward.
Flipping it over to the other side of the ball, more competition going to be happening at the corner spot, right? Certainly, I know you and Matt have both talked about really liking your top 3 guys after the release of Jair Alexander, which we will get to in a second. Don't think I ain't going to ask about it. But the idea, after those kind of initial top, whatever you want to call them, 3, you do have a lot of unknowns, and you do have a lot of guys that I think there's a lot of promise there. Are you still on the lookout there? I know you always talk about it's 365 day a year job, but are you on the lookout, or is it the expectation that a number of those guys are going to make the jump?
Yeah, I think I really like, again, we have 3 guys that have I think they've combined started over 90 games in the National Football League, and we feel really good about those 3 guys. And the versatility that they bring. I mean, all 3 guys are able to play inside and outside, and so we're excited about that. I would, again, there's not many teams in this league that probably have 3 guys that they feel really good about. We do. So again, I like our depth there. I do think, between, Kalen King and Kamal Haddon and Micah Robinson, I think there's going to be some really good competition for the back end into that roster. I'm excited to give those guys that opportunity to see. But kind of, what you're talking about, we're always going to look to add to that. And if guys become available, whether it's today, tomorrow, as we get into camp, certainly we'll be looking at that. But I like where we are right now. There are some guys that are going to have to go earn it to solidify that back end of that corner group. But I'd like to see those guys have the opportunity to compete for those jobs.
I wanted to ask you, I wanted to interject on draft, okay? Because one, thank you for not taking a kicker or punter in the draft. I really appreciate that. So thanks for that. But I did have a fun question for you. I know that you're really busy for the draft, and the draft this year was, it was incredible. It was,
how cool was that, right?
It was the coolest thing I think I've ever experienced in my life, and it was incredible. And I know you didn't personally, because you're actually one of the few people at 1265 that works during the draft.
Yep.
Not that everybody doesn't, but in a typical draft. But so, did you get to do anything cool? For you personally, or with the family, or was there anything that you got to experience the Green Bay draft, or was it just kind of in the corner while you're doing deals and you know what I mean? Was there anything that you kind of remember that was cool about it?
I do remember a lot of it. I didn't get to experience much, really anything, as far as the outside part of it. My family did on Thursday night, particularly. My son, and he had about 7 buddies. They were running around. They thought it was fantastic.
Nice.
They were so for us, it really was business as usual, as for the most part, as we went through our process. But the cool moments just came, certainly in the first round when Mark got up there, and I mean, to understand what a big deal it was for him to get the draft here in Green Bay, and to have that moment up there, it was just, again, it was as soon as we were going through a number of things while we were on the clock, when we decided to go ahead and make the pick. I think I sat down, and one of our scouts just kind of said, "Hey, this place is about to erupt, right?" And I go, "Oh," and so yeah, I go, "Turn it up," So we listened to it, and just to kind of see Mark, how he handled that, and what a cool moment that was. The Baron Sorrell thing again was another cool moment we didn't expect coming. But I think just the whole vibe, as we were going into it, my biggest concern was getting in and out of here, making sure our process could be unaffected, and it never really, quite frankly, dawned on me what a great experience it was going to be for everybody involved in it, and it couldn't have been better. So I think that for me, that's my biggest takeaway, besides the players that we got that are going to help our football team, is just the fact that the city of Green Bay and the Packers and the NFL, I just thought it was a great event, and really just showed our town well.
Speaking of the draft and things that kind of transpired through it, obviously you mentioned the big pop when the golden selection gets made.
Mhm.
Murphy does the WWE style intro, and it was great. The golden selection, I got to admit, did surprise me. The idea that you guys hadn't taken a wide receiver in so long in the first round, and I know you've often talked about how it's just how it fell, and
Yes.
Ted used to say the same thing, right? But finally, you pull the trigger on a guy who is fast as hell, right? Like, there's no question about his speed. Like, that is certainly an attractive element. I did want to ask, looking kind of back through the course of the last 5-6 years, what have you, even back when Aaron was the quarterback and Matt kind of first came on the scene, I think it's noted and noticeable the games or times, the stretches where either MVS back in the day or Christian Watson more recently have kind of been on the sideline due to injury for either one game or a stretch of games. The offense has really seemed affected, right? The idea that they're
Sure.
still able to move the ball, score points, what have you, but it feels like much more of a grind when those guys have missed time. Did that inform you at all as far as, look, we know Christian's not going to be back until whenever later this year. We've got to be able to get someone on the field who can affect on the offensive side of the ball the same way. Maybe they're not the same players, but
Right.
that element alone should help open things up in Matt's offense.
Yeah, it's interesting when you run 4.29 in the combine. Obviously, that's a huge talking point, right? Really, with Matthew, that was obviously a plus, and he plays the game very fast. But really, there was so much more about his game, his hands, and his ability to get in and out of his breaks, and just his overall instincts and awareness of the game that really drew us to him more so than anything. Christian's speed on the outside, what he does is pretty hard to replicate for anybody. There's very few guys that have the size and the power and the speed that he has. Certainly, Matthew's fast, and he can do so. But that really wasn't a lot of a big factor as we went into that selection. The whole first round wide receiver thing, obviously I've dealt with that for a long time. It's just it
And now you
boggles
never
my
have to deal with it again.
yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
At least, well, in a couple of years they'll probably be saying it again, or whatever other position we haven't taken in a while. But
Right.
in all seriousness, the thing that's always when you had Devontae Adams and Greg Jennings and Jordy Nelson and all these guys that were such great players, Pro Bowl type players in the second round, I never understood why it mattered, but it is what it is. But to see the reaction on and the way Mark set it up on draft day was, you can't make that up. That was fantastic.
And then in the second round, I only wanted to touch on this because it's so unusual, given everything that's transpired in the CBA and everything and the way things are slotted now. But all these second round picks, they're not signed yet, including yours. Is this
Right.
just a weird happenstance? I know there's the kind of
Yeah.
two teams that have signed their second rounders with fully guaranteed deals. Is that a major sticking point? Is that something you're hearing from agents, or
No, and
do you expect that to get done by the time camp starts?
We do, and again, obviously we do. I think this is something that over the past few years you've seen. This is kind of how it's fallen. It's really, it has, it has something to do with obviously what you talked about, guaranteed money in the for the contract, and it's just, it always bogs down here and moves slower because no agent wants to get jumped by somebody who got picked, behind them. So that's why it happens. As we get closer to camp, those things usually, kind of take care of themselves, and hopefully, well, for us as well. So it's just a big waiting game. These things are used in recruiting for agents against them and for them as they go through this. So that's why this particular round always seems to be the last to sign.
Speaking of guaranteed money, see, this is how you do it, Brian. Speaking of guaranteed money, we got Jair Alexander's relatives on Twitter talking about guarantees or lack thereof from the Green Bay Packers, which I didn't think was a huge surprise given what the contract was structured, and everybody knew it, saw it. I don't want you to get into the details. I don't need you to talk about the conversations you had with Jair or his representatives. I will say, though, and just because I know there are a whole ton of Packers fans who have this question, feel this way, how are you a better team without Jair Alexander? I understand the frustrations of his inability to stay on the field consistently, but I don't think there's any argument to make that you're a better defense if he's on the field. And now he's going to be on the field for the Ravens.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to that, whether he could stay on the field, right? That was always the thing over the past 4 years, really, for us, was his ability to be out there, and what that kind of does. I think obviously bringing in Nate Hobbs and then Keyshawn stepping up like he did, and Carrington going to, I think that's what allows us to be a better football team than we were last year. Just those guys having more experience, bringing in Nate as well. Because the reality is Jai really wasn't on the field for as much at all the past couple of years. So it's a shame. I mean, he's such a good player for us, and it's just one of those things that we would have loved to work out in some way, but he just I think over the last 4 years with what we were paying him, and his ability to stay on the field, that was just something I think it was time for us to move on. It was probably really good for him as well to have a fresh start. And I know there was frustration on his part and our part, just for his inability to be out there on a consistent basis. So hopefully that'll change for him as he goes forward. But for us, I think it was important that we had hopefully a little bit more stability there.
Well, I told Wallers we'd have you for like around 10 to 12 minutes, and it's been 15. Do you mind can we ask you just a few more questions? I mean,
Absolutely.
I know Wallers is a taskmaster over there. I don't want to like get off track. But,
I'm sure there's a tea time involved, so that's probably why he wants to get to that. So
at least you're honest.
Fair.
That's what I like about you, Brian, the honesty. Speaking of contracts, because that's all the shit we talk about in the offseason. Zach Tom, when's that going to get done? I mean, I made a whole stink about this earlier this summer, man. Like, you got Adam Stenovich out there talking about how he's going to have to compete for a right tackle. Wait, at what point do you say this is a core player, we're going to lock him up?
Yeah. First of all, we're always competing, right? No matter who you are and what your contract status is. And all that. But I will say, no, we've had really healthy conversations with Zach about locking him up, and certainly that's something we'd like to do. Though these things take time, as you know, and they never happen very quickly. But confident, obviously, he's been a really good player for us since the time he got here, done everything right by us, and we'd certainly like to make that happen. So hopefully we'll get there soon.
And then you pulled the trigger on the fifth-year option for Devonte Wyatt. You declined to do so for Quay Walker. Mm-hmm. What are your expectations for Quay? Because I know you've talked pretty glowingly a couple of times now about how you do expect him to be a core part of this defense. What are your expectations there? Are you really kind of bullish on what you saw towards the end after he got back from the injury? It really seemed like he and Cooper had a good thing going there in that game against Philly. What are your expectations for Quay Walker?
Yeah, my expectations are really, really high. And really the only reason we didn't do the fifth-year option, I think you guys probably know this, that a lot of the outside linebackers are calculated into that number. So just to make less sense, we're going down that road with him as well to see if we can make that happen as well. So, but no, we've been bullish on Quay since he got here. He's played a lot of really, really good football for us. We think his best football is still in front of him, but he's just consummate pro, does everything the right way. Has a level of toughness and focus that our defense needs, and really having those two guys on the field at the same time, the athleticism that brings, and the size, the ability to rush the passer, the ability to cover. I think those two guys are going to work well off each other as we move forward.
One thing that did hit the internet yesterday, kind of out of nowhere on our end, maybe you knew it was coming, but Ed Policy met with the local media and had some things to say about priorities and winning football games, which is no surprise. But the portion of the interview, interviews that I was very interested in was when he was asked about the structure, right? Which feels like maybe we on the outside are a little more kind of invested in this than you guys are on the inside. But like Ed Policy talking about the fact that you and Matt and Russ really working well together. That's what he's observed. But wanting to maybe meet a little bit more with him to facilitate more and or better communication. Is that something that you welcome? Is that something you think is necessary? Because again, from the outside looking in, I've always talked about and felt, and I think your own historian Cliff Crystal has written about this extensively. The less that the executive side of things is involved on the football side of things, the healthier and better the Green Bay Packers have been. So I just wondered what your response to that was.
Yeah, I've obviously been here a long time, so I've kind of got to see a number of structures in place here. Obviously, when I got hired by Ron, there was a certain structure in place. Mike Sherman took over in it for a period of time, and there was this different structure in place. And then, I've worked under Ted, where it was back to kind of the way it was with Ron, and then certainly the way it's been, for me over the past since 2019 or 18. So, to me, it's really comes down to the people and their ability to work together. And I think we got a really good group right now that communicates very, very well. I think when Ed coming in, there's going to be a lot that I think he's going to want to be part of that he hasn't been part of prior, to just kind of gain the knowledge of how everything works together. So I think it's a really good thing. Certainly, I'm going to say that he's my new boss, right? So we got to say that. But at the same time, I'm excited for Ed and kind of some of the things that he wants to do with the organization moving forward. For Matt, myself, and Russ, our goal doesn't change. We're trying to win a championship. We're all trying to do our job the best we can. We've been together a long time now, so we've really found a way to communicate on all the issues and the things that we need to do moving forward in a really good way. There's a really good cadence there. With Mark, we met every couple weeks, and so this is just going to be a little bit more. But I don't think it's going to, really change a ton of how Russ, Matt, and I communicate on a daily basis, because we're talking every single day. So, but no, I think I'm excited for Ed, and he's waited for this opportunity, and he's certainly knows our culture. He's not coming in from the outside, so he knows how important winning and chasing championships is to this organization. So yeah, it's nice to have that kind of support.
Really appreciate the time, Brian. This is amazing that you even agree to do it. I got one final question. I don't know about Corey. Corey's got kicker.
I'm good. I got my
probably.
two. I got my two, Brian. Thank you.
All right, very good. My final question out the door here is something that permeates online, and there are Packers fans who feel this way, and that's why I want to present it to you. Simply because we had a gentleman in our happy hour last night who offered up his Twitter account to you if you need a burner to go and battle this online, because it does seem to be a very online particular kind of complaint when they see something like a Jair Alexander being released, a very good player, and this team that has perennially been kind of knocking its head against the wall as far as trying to get back and win a Super Bowl. And he said, it's time to get back to contending for championships, and I don't think anybody disagrees that yes, let's go, right? Like that sense of urgency that you talked about at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. But there's a faction of the fan base that legit thinks that you and or the Green Bay Packers are satisfied with just winning a lot of football games. Now, I think that's insanity, but I wanted to ask you here in this forum and maybe get your response and or anything you might be able to tell Packers fans as far as A, how freaking tough this is, but B, how, clearly your number one kind of job here is to win a championship in Green Bay. It's just fascinating to me that people think that there's some kind of complacency in that regard when it comes to everything going on inside 1265.
Yeah, I think it's I don't obviously I don't follow a lot of that stuff, but I will say, from the time I stepped foot into this building back in 1997 as an intern, it's never changed, right? That the only thing that we hang banners for, that we put up around this building, is world championships, Super Bowls now, and everything that we do and we think about goes into that. I think our philosophy on that is we want to compete for them every single year. We want to be involved and relevant to compete for a championship every single year. So there are things that we do look at long term that way. I've never been a big believer to try to build up for a window. I never thought that's a wise thing to do. I want to be, try to be in this tournament every single year. But yeah, when you walk around this building and you talk to the different people, I think this goes throughout our building, and how important winning championships is. I don't think that would be something they would question.
I love it. Brian, you're the absolute man. Can't thank you enough for the time. I hope you're, at least, I know last year you said you don't really get away. You just go to all your kids' baseball games and stuff. So I hope you're ready to go to a lot of baseball games this summer prior to, like you said, the grind really starting there in late July.
Yeah, I will enjoy this time off, but every year it's the same. As we get closer to middle of July, it's more and more exciting to get back at it. And I know the whole group when we left here was kind of one of those moments where it wasn't like the last day of school where everybody was just screaming to get out here. Everybody was kind of like, okay, there's a lot we got to get done, and we want to get back soon. So that'd be good.
Love it. Absolutely love
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much, Brian.
Brian.
Have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you.